Does the government recognize the important role that the small business sector plays in South Africa's economy?
Yeah, I think we all recognize how important the SME sector is. I think the big issue we're trying to get around is how to make it work, how to make it sustainable, and then more importantly, how to develop and grow a strong SME base for this country.
Yeah, but when you recognize the importance of a particular segment, you actually support it and you develop it. So my question was in part directed at trying to get a sense of whether the government, in recognizing, actually gives the support that's necessary for small businesses to grow.
Yeah, sure. I think there's been a lot of investment from the DTI environment in terms of the 3-pillar strategy, improve the non-financial and financial support to SMEs to help them access markets, as well as the legislative environment to say let's make it easier for them to thrive. And private sector as well, doing a lot to try to help, but are we doing enough? I think that's the big question.
Is it enough, the kind of help that we're seeing from the government? You talk about what the DTI is doing in terms of trying to develop the small business sector, but are we not seeing these efforts on the side of the DTI being negated by other government policies? Is government policy in harmony in trying to develop the sector?
But I think it's not as easy as we think it is to solve a big problem like we do have. You have a countless amount of people in the system that's reluctantly there. A lot of people, a lot of our SMEs currently right now can't afford to find a job, they can't afford to retire, and because of that they actually go to the environment to actually go fend for themselves and become entrepreneurs. And government's trying their best, we're trying our best, but obviously there's much more we can and should be doing.
Yeah. Does it help to have then the government and the ruling party and some elements in the ruling parties talk about nationalization and the development of a strong government sector when we do know that practically on the ground it's actually that small guy at the corner who's doing the most contribution in terms of increasing employment in the country?
Sure, and I think if you just look at the face of a typical entrepreneur, it speaks to exactly that. I mean, right now, for example, the average entrepreneur or typical entrepreneur in our country, half of them take a product in its current form and sell it. So there's no value add to it. 30% will add some value and 20% render services. So if you also understand about 67% of all entrepreneurs, they only employ themselves. Not employing other people as well. So very definitely we have to do much more in terms of making sure that we start talking about entrepreneurship at every single level, growing entrepreneurship at school level already.
Kobe, where does the problem lie then?
Well, I mean, I think the big issue is if you look at South Africa, we have a legislative environment which doesn't necessarily legislate the small to medium-sized enterprises. So let me give you an example. Today, you lose your job, and I lose my job. We can start a business tomorrow. Anywhere else in the world, especially Western countries, if we just wanted to start a business, whatever that might be, we would need to go through a legislative process. We would have to go and get the licensing to get this done. We needed to get registered. Let's face it, in South Africa, you could literally start operating tomorrow, and that's good news and bad news. Firstly, from a standards perspective, it's bad news because you can't regulate the standards that well. But from a good news perspective is that we can start employing a lot of people and potentially in what we call an informal type economy. And this is a massive, massive spinner from an employment perspective. And the question is, how do we harness that from a governmental perspective? I don't think we're getting it perfectly right. I think there's a lot more government can do in order to get this right. Yeah,
I raised the issue of nationalization because it's important, because if you are saying people must have entrepreneurial designs, if you like, you are actually saying they should be doing this outside of government interference. But at the same time, if you have then the government talking about nationalization potentially as a policy, you're in effect saying the efforts of these people should not be recognized. Nico, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I think, look, from a legislative point of view, there's a lot more that we should be doing. I think also if you look at a lot of the current environment talks about access to financial assistance. We speak a lot about giving them access to finance, a lot of funds. You can name a string of funds this long. But our responsibility is to give somebody 100,000 rand facility to manage if they haven't got the financial acumen. So it boils down to let's give them entrepreneurial skills. Let's see how entrepreneurial they are. And let's also look at non-financial support. I mean, right now, one of the single biggest reasons why SMEs fail is just because of pure financial acumen. They don't know debits from credits, they don't know money in, money out. And because you haven't got a great financial acumen, what tends to happen, you don't price correctly. You don't understand margins, you don't negotiate with suppliers properly. And as a result, you have a situation where they don't run their numbers properly, use your invoice book more than, you don't use your invoice book as much as your checkbook, and you go into a bankrupt situation. Yeah.
So what you're saying is that it's not all about money, it's also other skills that are deficient here. Are we getting the kind of focus that's required to get that right?
Yeah, in essence, I don't think so. I think there's a lot more to be done. If you just look purely at the non-financial acumen that talks to your marketing strategy, a simple thing like, for example, how do you advertise? How do you get your communication of your product to market? Because right now, if you've got a great product in a good market and you're making good money with a good service offering, then that's your cash flow. good sales equals good cash flow. You don't have to go lend money then. Yeah.
Is our education system supportive of this drive to try to get the small business sector developing? Because I say this because I came across, I think it was about a year ago, a young man who had developed a concept around trying to make people understand cash flow by using parts of the body to describe the various parts of it. Do we find the education system supportive enough? I'll pose it first to you, and then I'll get Kobe to answer.
Yeah, I think we're seeing much more curriculum starting to change now. We saw some from a primary to secondary level, it's just about business plans, economics, talking about running a business. At the tertiary level, I was hugely surprised to see some universities now offering entrepreneurial MBAs, where your thesis is actually a real life. You start your business and let's say the business develop, as opposed to some theoretical plugging of paper. So I do think we're moving towards that environment, but we have to do much more. Also, if I go back to my previous point about the poor financial acumen, looking at how to run your numbers, you just need to look at your current maths results in the system currently to say that unless you do something right now, you're actually going to exacerbate this problem.
Yeah, let me give you my take on this as well. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, we interviewed somebody on this very show that was from a governmental body that looked after SMEs, and there's a focus here for government where they've got workshops across the country that roll out in these different like non-governmental type organisations, where you get taught how to do a cash flow statement, how to do a balance sheet, what is it that you need to understand about business if you are going to be starting a business. The question is, and the question I pose is, do most people that are in the SME sector actually know these tools are available to them, number one? And number two, is government doing enough to promote these tools? And then thirdly, once they actually understand these tools are available, how effectively are they being utilized? Because let's face it, if you're an entrepreneur, it's tough enough being in your own business. I mean, it must be really, really hard. And just to get it off the ground and just to make sure it works and then make sure it's sustainable. So those are all challenges, I think, that are available to entrepreneurs out there.